I'll kind of give a quick introduction and then we'll get kind of into the bulk of today's conversation. So it's going to be, I think, a strong topic. I know it's hard hitting to many of us. It also, to an extent, can be a bit polarizing for many organizations. I think when we talk about AI, the discussions over the next 6 months also dramatically change. It's such an evolving space, and it has been. So, kind of a really quick high-level introduction. My name is Kyle. I'm the CEO here at Reviewr. Been doing this since we started the company back in 2010. Not to get too long-winded, I think what makes Reviewr rather unique to both, have these types of conversations is we come from the same space as many of you. So in a prior life, we served on the review committee for a lot of funding opportunities. So a combination of scholarships, grants, fellowships, you name it. We were part of the review teams. Quite frankly, got kind of fed up with both the inefficiencies, but also a lot of the compliance elements that came into it. From the misplacing and losing of information to the lack of data redaction, things like that. So we built Reviewr as an online platform to make everybody's lives not only easier to administer these types of programs, but equally, if not more important, is how do we elevate the experience for everybody else involved besides just the admins and the operators? So, from an applicant's perspective, from a review team's perspective, to a board member perspective, and really everybody in between. So with all that said, we've been for the last probably 6 or so months been working very closely with many of our clients to kind of define like what does an AI strategy look like in a practical use to run their scholarships. And so for many of you on the call here today that might be doing different things or doing things in conjunction with scholarships, fellowships, grants, recognition awards, you name it, these same kind of topics and things that we're going to talk about certainly are going to relate to you guys as well. So don't get hung up on scholarships, although that will be the example. And again, I think it's a challenging conversation because there's some simple high level AI conversations that we can have. And then there's the most extreme elements, which is, how do we leverage AI to make reviews and selections on our behalf? And I think that's a polarizing conversation. It's one that a lot of ethics will come into it. And so for us at Reviewr, it's all about how do we work with our current clientele, 1,000+ of these organizations to define like what are the key high level elements that would provide you substantial operational efficiency, but then also some of the behind the scenes things that can just elevate the experience, elevate the fairness, make your programs a bit more impactful. So quite frankly, this list could be significantly larger than 5 pieces. I think we're going to focus on just 5 here today. These are all things that I'm very heavily focused on. They're things that we're doing now, the things that we're launching here in the next 2 months tops. So by the end of Q1 of 2026, every one of these elements will be available. And then also like what are some of those more forward thinking initiatives that we want some of your feedback on as well. So with all that said, we're going to just jump right into the 5 key elements that I think are going to transform scholarship by using AI. I do have the chat pulled up. So for anybody on the call here today that is already leveraging AI, either integrated with your current processes, or if you find yourselves, going to Chat GPT or Claude or whatever it might be, to help you guys, toss it in the chat. I'm very curious to see what you're currently doing now. For those of you guys who are also, jump starting these conversations with your team, like what are some of the things that you're worried about, or what are some of the things that you're focusing on? Because not only will that help us kind of decide like the next phase of what we're going to do at Reviewr, but also your feedback is probably very relevant to everybody else on the call. So I like to make these conversations as roundtable-ish as we possibly can. So the first thing I want to start with is AI detection, specifically from an applicant's point of view. So right now, a growing concern amongst a large number of our clients is the increasingly large number of applicants who are using tools like ChatGPT to help and assist writing content for them. And when I say content for them, it could be a wide variety of things that are in your application forms. I don't believe we're concerned around, students or applicants using ChatGPT to write their name, right? Like that's not a concern. What is a concern though, is when they take an essay prompt directly from your application forms, plug it into Chat GPT and basically say, hey, write this essay on my behalf. And they come back into your application forms and they copy and paste it back in, right? Like there's a dramatic difference between that. And also like how AI is used to assist with the applicant's writing. You're going to have a lot of your applicants who might have really well stubbed out, well-written essays or content that they use AI tools to help with things like grammar. Others are kind of stuck with like, they don't necessarily know how to address the essay, but they do want to write it themselves. So they're using tools like AI to help kind of feed them the prompts to kind of stub out like a framework of how to properly answer it. So these are kind of broad examples, and which ones are you most focused on? So for us, a lot of our clients want to get a better understanding of, on average, like how much AI is actually being used by our applicants themselves. Is it, 60% of our applicants are using AI? Is it 10%? Is it 100%? We don't know. And is that number going to change over the next 6 months to 1 year? And the answer to that question is absolutely, certainly. From some of our early data that we have, it suggests that roughly 42% of a scholarship application is written with the assistance of AI. Now, again, to be clear, that's not verbatim 100% written with AI. It's used to assist with it. So what we're doing here at Reviewr, again, this is working with our clients, is helping you guys get a better understanding of what's actually going on so you can start to lay out policies and enforcement plans moving forward. And I think there's a couple different ways that we want to do this, and I am going to preview some of the different tools that you guys will have available to you. It's on a applicant by applicant basis, getting a picture of, as Kyle the scholar, how much of his form was used with AI, and then specifically which questions were written with AI and to what extreme. Was it copy and paste, or to help them build a framework? And then from there, we can start to leverage the law of average. So we can say, hey, if we have 100 scholarship applications, on average, a scholar uses AI for, in this case, 42%. That becomes our new threshold. And so you guys can start to make decisions on, okay, well, if they used AI for between, 0 to 50%, it's probably okay. If they used it for 80 to 90%, now you actually have the proof and the raw data to start to make some policies and some changes with it. I have heard from some clients that they're going to be very firm that says, hey, look, in our applications, we have tools in place to detect the use of AI. Don't use it. If you do use it, you will be disqualified. Others, quite frankly, don't care. They just want to get a better understanding of what it is. Some may not care for everybody. They just care more so on the finalists, right? So this is like the question back to you guys of, do you A, feel that this is a concern with your program? And B, if it is a concern, like what do you want to start to do with this data? So to help you visualize that, here's kind of what we're thinking at Reviewr. And I'll kind of walk through this relatively slow, but think about it from a perspective of a credit score. There are a lot of platforms and tools out there that are doing AI detection, and they're getting quite good. So, a year ago, a lot of organizations actually stopped doing text-based essays because of the concern that applicants were using AI. And instead, they shifted to doing more like video-based essays, right? So like an interview or a virtual video. And they did that as a great tool to counteract AI. But then the downsides to that is that now it becomes very hard to redact data because we can visually see the person who's doing the essay. We've also gotten to the point now where AI can create videos are hard to distinguish. So at Reviewr, instead of trying to solve everything, we are going to be integrating with multiple tools out there that are doing AI detection, and we are going to treat it like a credit score. Each of these tools are going to be doing checks and balances in different ways. None are better than the other. But instead of giving you one end source of truth, we're going to say, hey, here's like at a high level how we've been able to aggregate it from these different data sets. Now go do with it what you want. So in Reviewr, the idea here is that when you go to look at your submissions or your collected entries, we want you to be able to visualize two different data sets, one of which would be AI detection, and then the other is plagiarism, right? Because there are still applicants who might be plagiarizing content. This is going to give you on a per applicant basis what percent of their profile or of their application leverage AI for assistance. So in this example up here, we have, our top line, they used AI for 5%, but down here towards the middle, they used AI for 70%. And so now that we know on an applicant by applicant basis what the utilization was, we can now very easily kick out the averages. So again, let's just hypothetically pretend that on average 42% is used. That 70% number is well outside of our threshold, and now you can make decisions with it. The next question that comes into play is, okay, well, if this person used AI for a percent of their profile, what did they use AI for? So we can start to then open up these applications and get a bit more detailed into the analysis. So if I open up a particular submission here, we'll just say it's Leslie. On a question by question basis, we can look at the track. So we can say, okay, well, 100% of this essay prompt was pulled from AI, and then maybe 100% of this was plagiarized. Those are just kind of made up numbers for the sake of visuals. So now my question comes in of like, okay, well, if we think that this essay was 100% written with AI, what is the result? So we can actually then click into it and then we can give you the raw analyzation of the content. So it'll actually show you how much of it was AI written, how much of it was human written, was it paraphrased, was it a framework, was it a verbatim copy and paste? And again, that kind of gives you guys then the firepower to go back and make selections off of that information. So I'll kind of just leave it at that for AI detection. Plagiarism works in a very similar manner. It's a bit easier because since it was plagiarized, we know exactly where it came from. So it actually would show you specifically what was flagged as plagiarized, and then also the source material that it was pulled from. So again, just to kind of recap, the goal here is to not make any decisions for you guys. It's more so to give you the data that you need to start to set policies, because this is a growing space. If that number right now is 42%, my gut instinct is that number will be 60 to 70% by the end of next year. These tools are being promoted within schools. People are using it in daily life. Like, why wouldn't they leverage it? And so if you're going to go on the extreme attack and say, hey, we have tools in place to detect AI, don't use it, you now need to actually have the tools in place to be able to back up that proof. So that's the first thing I want to kind of look at here today. The next thing I want to look at is summaries. And so this is a tool that, right now is available for people within Reviewr. And the premise behind this is that you're collecting a lot of information within your forms. And it's not just your forms, it's actually the profiles, it's your applications, it's your file uploads. It could be also your score sheets. And for many organizations, they collect such robust data that applicants start to look relatively similar to one another. Their team is spending a significant amount of time reading through essays, the application, the financial needs analysis, the academic achievements, the volunteer hours. And for many of them, especially larger programs, the goal is to be able to take, I'm going to make up a number, 300 submissions and whittle that down to the top 50 to the top 100. And then for those individuals, we do a real deep dive into their content and do our selections and our judging and scoring. But how do we give you guys enough data to go from 300 submissions down to the top 50 to the top 100? Or for many of our clients, the applications are what needs to be reviewed, but how do we take all this information and make it a bit more user-friendly for our committees to very quickly and easily look at what's important to make high-level decisions off of? And for me, I think summaries are twofold. I think it's really important and helpful to get like a comprehensive picture of our applicants, but then also each one of you on this call today is valuing different things within a scholar. Some of you are very focused on financial need. Some of you are very focused on personal storytelling. Some of you are very focused on academic achievements. So done properly using AI and summaries, we can start to nitpick and pull out of complex application forms the very critical pieces of information that you value. So I do want to visualize this for you because, again, it's not a complex thing, but I think how you visualize it is what makes it very valuable. And it could look something like this. So here's an example of an application. And as you can kind of see here, we've got some qualifying questions. We have all of their personal details. We have academic information. We've got financial need information. We've got a bunch of extracurricular activities. And we've got 2 long essays. On top of that, we also have 2 letters of recommendation. We have FAFSA information. We've got tax return documentations, right? There's a lot going on here. And so let's just use a relatively simple number. If you had 50 submissions and I, as your review committee member, had to read through all of this and compare it to a scorecard, and then remember what I read when I compare it to another candidate, I'm looking at 20, 30 minutes, right, per submission. That is volunteer fatigue waiting to happen. So what I would challenge then and say, okay, in this application form, like what am I looking for in a strong quality candidate? And then we can flip the switch and say view summary. And now we get a comprehensive picture of who they are. So in this case, we have Maya Elizabeth. We have a high level paragraph of who they are as an applicant. We have all of their information. And then I have mini summaries. So I can summarize their eligibility. I can summarize their academic information. I can summarize their financials. I can summarize their leadership. I can summarize their letters of recommendation. And then again, this is now what can be used side by side next to a scorecard to rank them. So say, for example, you've got a scorecard question that says rank their personal narrative. I can now tell you their writing quality. I can tell you their career goals. I can tell you their themes. Maybe one of your scorecard questions is to rank their leadership and community service. Boom, instead of me having like 16 bullet points, I can tell you how many volunteer hours they had and the type of volunteering that they did. So again, this is not meant to replace human judging. I think you're collecting this information for a reason. You need to leverage it. But I think the goal here is to be able to convert this into something much more bite-sizable and manageable for the review team. I do know for certain that we've got a lot of clients who are going to take this information and they're going to use it to basically do a high level initial vetting, thumbs up, thumbs down, just kind of weed out the applicants that just don't quite fit the mold of what they're looking for in a scholar. And then they're going to open this up then for formal judging with the full on application, all the file uploads, etc. So again, they may seem like small things, but if the review team can cut their time on task by half, if you were to convert that to volunteer hours and volunteer hourly wage, we're talking about like tens of thousands of dollars saved when an average hourly rate for a volunteer is $34. The next thing I want to talk to you guys about is, I think, one of the more robust tools here, and it's doing document verification. So I don't know if you guys want to react with like an emoji or a thumbs up, but raise of hands, like how many of you within your scholarship applications are collecting both academic achievements and then financial need? And then you're collecting supporting documents to verify it. So for example, like, are we asking for things like GPA and then having them upload a transcript to verify it? How many of you guys are collecting like parent household income and then collecting tax documentation to confirm, or FAFSA to confirm that the household income and financial needs matches what they said? We have some clients who might have 100 submissions and they go through every single one of them. And maybe just one of them is wrong, right? Like the person put in like a household income that didn't quite match what was in the tax documentation. Well, great, you caught that one, but you also spent time on the other 99, literally reading through entire applications, looking at all the file uploads, line by line, comparing them just to do nothing because it was accurate. If that takes you 10, 15 minutes a piece, we're literally looking at 20 to 30 hours of human time doing this type of stuff. So what if, and it's a funny question because it exists, we can use AI to do this for us. So to give you guys a preview of what that might look like, and I don't want to overwhelm you guys with UIs. I want you guys to focus very specifically on like the outcomes. So right now we're looking at an applicant. We might actually have like a section here called verification, and we can then start to look at, well, what do you want to verify? So these are all going to be subjective, things like GPA, credit hours, household income, enrollment status, their tax documentation. And what's happening using AI is we can go and grab all the supporting file uploads that were added. We can scan those documents and then pull the data out. Now, once we pull the data out, such as GPA, enrollment status, school, household income, we can then start to compare it to data within the form. And then once we do so, we can start to flag, are there any discrepancies? So in this example, we can say, okay, well, in the form, they said they have a 3.75 GPA. We actually extracted a 3.75 from their transcript. And when I press view, you can actually see where it pulled from, right? So their GPA was a 3.75. To catch one that there's a discrepancy, they said that they completed 45 credit hours, but in reality, they only did 42. So if I view the document, there it is, 42 credit hours. And these are fake documents, just to be very clear. But you can kind of see in real time like how this is working. Whereas I, as a human, would have to literally look through all of these transcripts. And it's funny because every transcript is going to look slightly different. So now you have to figure out like, where do I even look to find the number of credit hours? Do I have to count it up, or this will all do it for you? Similar concept goes with FAFSA or financial needs. In the form, they said they had 142,000 family income. Look at the file upload. There's their 1040 tax document, and then boom, there's the grossed income. So it's literally doing it all for you. It'll show you all the fields that we checked. It'll then show you the discrepancies, right? So if I'm checking for 8 fields, these are the 2 that we flagged. And then now you can do something with this. Maybe there was a mistake that was made. Maybe it was an outdated document, but now you know, and you didn't spend hours and hours doing this. Better yet, you can also take it one step further and save the applicant substantial time. So if we already are going to be having them upload their transcript and upload their tax return documents and upload their FAFSA, why are we asking them to do that in the forms? If we already have that in the file uploads, like, why don't we just cut this step out for them? So the next kind of iteration of this could be literally taking data from a transcript and then pre-filling their application with that information, their name, their location, their expected graduation date, literally done for them. So we save them substantial time. You no longer have to worry about verifying it. And we know the accuracy is going to be data will be 100% accurate because it's being pulled directly from the formal document that you guys are using for verification. The next one I want to look at is doing automatic data redaction. So this is kind of a fun conversation. Right now at Reviewr, we do have built-in data redaction capability. So for example, like in your submission forms, we have things like name and email and demographic and location. You right now in Reviewr can target those form fields and say, hey, don't show to the review committee to ensure fairness and a non-biased review. Where this becomes more challenging is when that data lives in long form content like an essay or within a file upload. So maybe, for example, like I'm a reference and I'm writing a reference on behalf of Susie. I might write in the third paragraph, Susie was a tremendous student for me at XYZ University. Well, right away, there's two polarizing, clear and obvious PII elements. So this is where AI comes into play. So what's going to end up being able to happen is we can analyze the submission form to identify what would be considered PII, Kyle's name, his email, his address. And then now that we know what's considered PII, we can now scan and analyze long form content, essays, file uploads, you name it, and I'd see if that content lives somewhere else. And then if so, auto redact it for you. So instead of saying my name is Maya Rodriguez, it might say my name is redacted and I attend redacted in redacted. So for me, like data redaction is a really important concept here. I think a large percent of our scholarship providers are doing a redaction for the sake of non-biased reviews. But if you're going to commit to it, you actually have to commit to it. And while I think there's a lot of value in automatically hiding things like name, where the bulk of this happens is in long form content, which means that it requires a human to physically read every single word on every single form and every single file. Again, if you had 100 submissions and it took you 15 minutes a piece to do that, you're looking at two complete days, 25 hours or one day of manual work, just literally redlining and redacting data. So coming soon, I think that's going to help you guys build tremendously more trust. I think it's going to make the reviews far less biased and save you a whole heck of a lot of time. The next thing I want to look at here is kind of the last topic, which is using AI to help you guys analyze data. And that's a bigger conversation because there's a lot that we can do here. Today, I want to focus on just a couple things. And it's going to be looking at like judging tendencies, but also how do you monitor judging fatigue? And so again, I don't want to go too deep down this rabbit hole. I only have about 10 more minutes left for you guys. So I'm going to focus on just two of those. But the general idea behind this, and I'll give you an example, is to reduce judging fatigue. For many of you, you cannot ask a committee member to look at every single submission. So again, using small math for my brain today, if you had 100 submissions and I'm on your review committee, you really can't ask me to go read 100 scholarship applications. I don't have the time. I don't have the energy. By the time I get to number 100, I'm going to be reviewing them on a completely different scale than the first person that I looked at, right? So to counteract that, we at Reviewr have many tools from auto distribution to randomization, you name it. And in theory, that sounds great. I do promote that for the majority of our clients. The challenge with that is that means that not every applicant is being reviewed by the same judges. So what if I, as Kyle, on average, am a way stricter judge than Tony or Susie? How do you not penalize an applicant because they are paired up with me, but not them? So to kind of visualize what this could look like for you is some of our updated UIs that we're launching in Reviewr for judging configuration. And so these are small things. So for example, like judge to applicant ratio, we're going to be able to tell you like what an ideal ratio it is. And I understand for many of you guys, like ideal ratios aren't going to be possible. You have to go and recruit a bunch of additional helpers, which isn't feasible for everybody. But we can at least show you guys from a best practice perspective, like on average, a judge shouldn't look at more than X number. Here's your current ratio so you can do something with it. From there, giving you extreme flexibility to monitor your pairings. So for example, at Reviewr, we've got multiple different assignment models. The most obvious is that I can assign every submission to every judge. Well, in this example, then it basically says, well, then each judge is gonna be looking at 156 submissions. Okay, well, that's probably too many. So maybe I want to try the random balance distribution model. And I could say, well, I want to do equal distribution where each submission is scored 3 times. Great. Now we've knocked that down to 39 submissions per judge. That seems like a great number. Or maybe I want to override this and say, well, I want every submission to be scored, between 2 to 3 times, but I want my team to never look at more than 15 submissions. You can literally plug these numbers in, and then the system will then do the auto distribution for you. Maybe you're going to go very manual, right? You want to override this and say, okay, well, I want Dr. Sarah to be scoring these 3 submissions, and then boom, you pair them up. So it's all about visibility on volunteer fatigue and giving you guys a wide variety of tools to pair them up. So what I really want to look at now, though, is once this is done, what do you do with it? So I'm going to kind of go back to my last page here and preview the judging results. So right now, raise of hand, the vast majority of organizations that use scorecards to analyze submissions will run total scores and they'll run average scores. And again, that works really well if every single one of your judges scored every single submission. But what happens in that example I gave you earlier on? And we induce volunteer fatigue as well as judging tendencies. So we've launched a new kind of like AI-based metric called Review IQ. And what this does is it actually takes into consideration personal judging tendencies and it normalizes it for you. So for example, if I click on Daniel here, and that's a pretty decent example where they scored a total of a 217. Their average score is a 72. I give you min and max, but their review IQ score is a 0.87, which basically means they scored 13% below the group average. And you can kind of see why that happened down here. So, Professor Lisa Brown scored this applicant as a 70. He or she scores on average about a 76. Dr. Maria Garcia down here scored at a 75, which was her own personal average. So what's going to happen here is what if, Professor Lisa Brown on average scores a 30, right? And Maria scores a 70, and they both scored their own personal averages. The scores are now the exact same, right? So it's taking into consideration the personal judging tendencies per judge or per committee member, and then using that metric to compare against the rest. Jessica Brown down here, which is actually our highest rated applicant from both an average perspective and review IQ. Her average score is 13% above the collective average. So these are really powerful metrics. We can also have reporting that comes with this that shows you how the math was done. But again, here's the practical use case. If I, as Kyle, on average score a 15 and I never, ever, ever have scored higher than an 18, but Emily over here gives out 30s left and right, they're going to be penalized by being assigned to me. So this will kind of counteract it for you. So with all that said, I do want to pause. I know I threw a ton of things at you guys. I want to quickly recap the conversation. And then I am very fascinated within the chat if you guys are actually leveraging any AI right now in the daily operations of your program, or if there's things that you're looking at or any concerns, I want to make sure that we kind of get those out of the way because I think a lot of us are all on the same page. We know that AI is a very powerful tool. We know that we're using it in a lot of ways in life. How do we start to practically apply this to our program? And it's very possible that we've missed something, and that's fine. Let us know. That's kind of what our commitment is to you guys, is to be at the forefront of this. We're very fortunate to work with thousands of scholarship providers who have told us, hey, right now, these are the 5 key things that we need help with. And that's kind of what's guiding our development. But again, in 3 months, there's gonna be another 5 things that we're gonna be focused on. So I'm gonna go ahead quickly summarize the items here. So number 1 is AI detection. Again, this is a way for you guys to identify the utilization of AI by your applicants. Number 2 is creating what I call briefs or summaries, taking large application packets and converting to something much more user-friendly and easier for your review team. Number 3 is both eligibility and document verification. So being able to compare content collected to file uploads to confirm accuracy and validity. Number 4 is going deeper into redaction. So not just being able to say hide name, but also identifying things like name and demographics in long form content. And then number 5 is a broad topic, a lot of tools to enhance the judging experience, from being able to avoid volunteer fatigue, to normalize judging tendencies, to identify trends in analysis, things like that. So With all that said, I'm going to mute myself and I will hang out for as long as you guys want for any questions. I did toss into the chat my own personal calendar. If any of you guys want to chat a bit more about like your own specific programs and like how AI could be leveraged unique to your programs, would love to have that conversation. Again, these are kind of high level. We work with clients doing a lot of different use cases in a lot of different industries. For many of them, all five of these things may not be relevant. Maybe just one of them is. So we can kind of get deeper into like how it would work for you specifically. And while we're waiting too for any questions that might come in, I am curious if any of you guys want to just react with like an emoji or a thumbs up. Are you leveraging AI right now in some of your operations to power these programs, or is that a discussion that you guys are starting to have with your teams? I'm just kind of curious, like how early we are on this. For those of you guys who are kind of giving the thumbs up, I'm also curious: are these things that you're currently doing? Do we kind of do additional things? Again, it's a fun conversation because AI can be very powerful. I think where a lot of organizations struggle though is how do we take the power of AI and actually, do something with it that provides substantial value. And then one thing we didn't talk about is the ethics and then the privacy with it, right? So like I'm a huge proponent of things like Chat GPT. I think it's a great tool. I use it all the time. I use it to help me get my Christmas list for my children, right? But at the end of the day, we also have to be very, very sensitive and careful with what data we're fueling these platforms because they are aggregates and source tools. So on the Reviewr end, obviously, it's going to be a combination of our own internal stuff. None of your data will be shared whatsoever with any of our other clients. It won't be shared with any tools like Google or OpenAI. It's in a very siloed environment, the same platform that's SOC 2 Type 2 certified that's powering your current programs in itself. So I think it's an important kind of thing to address. I also want to note that none of our client data will be and is being used to do any type of like learning language models, right? It's unique to you guys. And also to leverage any of our AI tools, it's purely opt-in only. So yeah, question came in around some of the tools and if they're relevant to potentially smaller organizations sub 50. So today's conversation was 100% AI focused. Obviously, Reviewr in itself is an end-to-end scholarship management platform, and we didn't dive into like any of the other tools here today, right? So from the intake of applications to doing the judging and scoring to post selection relationships and deliverables. My question to that is, everybody has time and energy, and it comes down to like, where's time and energy most valuable? So if we're spending a lot of time, collecting applications via forms that we're now downloading and exporting into spreadsheets that we're sending to volunteer committee members, that adds pretty tremendously. But the often underlooked thing is the experience, right? Again, I lived a life where we were part of review committees where if we had, let's just use your number, 50 submissions, like what if 3 of those submissions were in a spam filter and they didn't get included within reviews? Or what if one of those applications didn't get the data redacted and there was a personal bias on the review end that prevented them from achieving scholarship success, right? Like there's no number that makes that okay. And so I think that's where Reviewr comes into play, is providing this infrastructure to create both tremendous efficiency, but also ensuring that everybody gets the opportunity that they deserve. And so, yeah, do I think, summarizing data for 50 submissions maybe is less valuable than 150 to an extent, but your team still has to read those 50 submissions, right? If we can cut down their time by half, I don't think anybody's going to have a qualm with that. So I would say right now, on average, most of our clients are sub 100 total submissions. We got many, many clients that have 10,000 plus, and we've got a lot of clients that have 15 submissions. Yeah, so question came in, are all these available in Reviewr? There are some of these that are currently actively being launched within our clientele. So we can kind of chat more about what that would look like for your subscriptions. Some of the ones like the data extraction to compare to file uploads are things that are launching here shortly. Everything that I showed you is going to be launched. We're targeting a Q1 2026 release for everything, but like things like summaries can be enabled right away. So we can kind of chat more about this. And I want to be very clear, like we're going to launch tools here like in the next week or two that maybe we'll get a ton of feedback from our clients and they'll be completely redone. I think in 6 months there's going to be something that is brand new that will be brought to us that's going to provide a ton of value. We'll build it in then as well. So I think the beauty of AI is it's not meant to be like, okay, here's a couple tools, now go use it. It's going to be a pretty adaptive roadmap and development on that where we can kind of stay at the cutting edge. And I guess while we're waiting for more questions, the question that did come in that said, like, are these currently available within Reviewr? A lot of this too is part of like an overarching, I don't want to say the word revamp, but we do product enhancements every 2 weeks at Reviewr. So literally every other Thursday we're launching. So we have a really active development cycle thing going on. And this page that I showed you here, I think it's going to be one of the most impactful things that our clients are going to be leveraging. None of this is new. It's just how it's being outputted. But there are a lot of components that go into configuration of pairing up your review team with applicants. And so at Reviewr, what we want to do is make this as extremely easy as possible. So we actually have built-in setup wizards where you can kind of like outline like how you want to configure your reviewing. So creating your groups, from there, building out your score sheets, assigning score sheets to groupings, adding your review team and your judges, doing all of your assignments, setting your judging timelines. And then once you do this, it kind of pre-configures your workflows. And then on demand, you can say, well, you know what, I want to reassign a submission. So I could come into my judges, I could reassign them from here. Or maybe I want to get a better understanding of my completion rates, right? So if I've got a bunch of judges who are scoring, how many of them are procrastinating? So being able to instantly see judging progress of how many are assigned to them, how many of them are complete, and then sending out reminders. So yeah, it's going to be a very exciting time for current clients of ours. And obviously for those of you guys who are in the market for a platform, a lot of really cool things coming. Yeah, so that's a great so question came in around, is it possible to craft essay questions to make it harder for applicants to use AI platforms? It's funny because the answer is yes, right? Like the more personal storytelling you can kind of get into, the better. So for example, like don't just say like demonstrate a time that you exhibited leadership, right? I think essay prompts have to very closely align with your mission and vision of an organization and what you're looking for on a scholar. Once you get to that point, you can start to make it much more specific where the AI use turns more into here's some information about me. Here's a framework of an essay. Help me lay out my thoughts, but then it does require them to do it. But the funny part about this is that there's now AI tools that are being used by applicants to de-AI their AI, right? So to answer your questions, yes, you can craft it to make it harder, but if an applicant really wants to use AI, they're going to do so. That's why I think it's really important to flag it. But that's also where like the percent comes into play, because what you're hopefully going to see is a downward pressure on the use. So instead of saying it was an 80% utilization of them copying and pasting it, it's now 20%, which means that they used AI to help build a framework, but not write it for them. I think that's a very happy medium.